So, right, this is the part of the show where we look into the leading headlines that are dominating around the globe. So what happened while you were sleeping? This is your overnight wrap. Now, Facebook on Friday suspended former U.S. President Donald Trump until at least January 2023 and announced changes to how it will treat world leaders who break the rules on its sites. Now, Trump has been permanently banned by Twitter. He remains suspended by YouTube as well. Now, the former president of America, he's criticized rather that this is a form of censorship and an insult to his voters. Now, to tell us more about the recent decision taken by Facebook, we are joined by Jan Vermuelen, who is the editor-at-large of My Broadband. Jan, it's such a pleasure to be talking to you this morning. Thank you for your time. First of all, let's talk about the power that Facebook has to suspend a world leader such as Donald Trump. He says it's censorship, essentially, but Facebook, of course, well within their right.
Yeah, they do reserve the right in their terms and conditions to basically kick you off the platform if you violate their terms and conditions. And those terms and conditions, they can change as they see fit. And so it's a private company. The Americans have defended the rights of private companies to do precisely this. And so while you look at the situation and you go, this is dangerous. The fact is that the corporate structures are not really designed to handle the fact that private corporations have taken over our public squares, as it were. And so Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and so on being so important to the public discourse is not something that's really envisioned. And so Facebook and Twitter find themselves holding responsibilities that perhaps they weren't geared up for when they started. And so, yeah, it's a tricky situation, and a thing that they're going to have to navigate carefully because obviously it's something that's quite concerning to nation states and regulators around the world.
Now, one of the instruments they've put in place to navigate this situation, Facebook in particular, is an oversight board. Can you just elaborate as to what the functions of the oversight board are and how do they carry them out?
Sure. So the idea is to have an independent body, or rather the company to be able to point to an independent body and say, look, we've got this body which is not under our control, or at least functions independently. We don't dictate to them what needs to happen. They just independently apply the rules of the platform. And so the idea behind a board like this, an oversight board, is for there to be a process that is applied equally to whoever is on the platform. Though there might be rules that force them to treat some people differently than others. So not everybody is necessarily treated the same, as we see with respect to political leaders. And that's true on Facebook and Twitter, where there is a special set of rules for people who are prominent public figures.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned the fact that if you're a prominent public figure, if you're an elected official, if you're a president, a statesman, you've got a different set of rules, essentially. The rest of us, am I right to say that we are governed by, ones and zeros? We're essentially governed by, the word escapes me now, but a pre-program that's within Facebook that if you do post something that might be offensive, whether it's reported or not, it will still be taken down. Now, for world leaders, how do those rules, how do they get bent, and who then, ensures that they are put into effect, correctly, the way they're supposed to be?
Right, and yeah, so the one word I think you're looking for is algorithm.
Algorithm, indeed.
And so there's two sets of things here. So on the one hand, you've got when something is a big enough deal that a human being needs to make a decision, then, or it gets kicked up the chain enough that a human being finally makes a decision, then you've got a set of rules that apply in those circumstances. The rest of us are largely governed by automated systems, or this algorithm that tries to automatically detect whether a post is harmful or offensive or something like that. Because the fact is, the platforms, the amount of content being posted to these platforms is just so vast that it's difficult for a human being to moderate absolutely everything. I mean, there's the size of Facebook's moderation team has been widely reported. You know, they've got this army, basically, of human moderators to look and deal with harmful and offensive content. And it's actually, it's quite rough on those moderators as well, because they have to sift through pretty shocking video content at times, and make judgment calls as to whether these things are allowed on the platform or not. And so there's ultimately the decision about whether something has been offensive or how the rules get applied get made by these pretty low-level staff members. If it's made by a human at all, it's often made by just a computer until you can pick up enough of a fuss elsewhere. If it's depending on what the thing is. I think the algorithms try and detect if someone is threatening harm, either suicide or murder or something like that. It gets kicked up to a human moderator for further action. But yeah, ultimately, it's not particularly high-level folks who are necessarily making the call. It's almost like a call center for moderation that ends up deciding your fate on platforms as an ordinary individual. If you were a world leader, it's an entirely different matter.
Of course. One of the world leaders who had his fate decided on one of the social media platforms, Muhammadu Buhari, the Nigerian president, he has, after Twitter pulled down his tweet, he took offense to that and banned Twitter in the country. Now, initially you think to yourself, Twitter are investigating this because this stops the people of Nigeria to have access to essentially the rest of the world via Twitter. But on second thoughts, could there be a financial standpoint perhaps for Twitter as well? Of course, advertising a big part of how they make money on their platform, just like Facebook, YouTube, and the rest essentially.
Yeah, there is a financial component to Twitter. Nigeria is the most populous country on the continent. Just like in South Africa, Twitter is huge there. And so, there's definitely a financial component to it there. But, I mean, it is a cause for concern when a government decides that a platform must be removed because its president decides it doesn't like it. I mean, imagine the outcry if Donald Trump had decided to ban Twitter in the United States after he got banned. And so, yeah, it is concerning. While there are certainly concerns over censorship and the implications of a wide-used platform like Twitter kicking off the president of your country, there is equally concerns about that same president then banning the rest of the country from using that platform because he doesn't like the judgment call that Twitter made here. And honestly, reading through the case, he was treated in much the same way as Donald Trump was, and it's only he's the one who reacted by banning the platform. Like his post was removed and he was given a 12-hour suspension. Exactly the same thing as what happened to Donald Trump after the Capitol riot attacks, and then of course Donald Trump violated the warning, and that got him suspended for life. Now,
you mentioned that his post was removed, given a 12-hour suspension. He probably missed the end of that suspension because he doesn't have access to Twitter. Poetic justice, if you will. But Donald Trump, you mentioned he's been suspended for life. How does one get back onto these social media platforms? How do I get myself unsuspended, especially if I'm not Donald Trump, if I'm just me, Bushema Tulini, tweeted something offensive, and I would like to get my name cleared?
Sure. So if you want to get your name cleared, then you'll need to appeal using the process outlined in the suspension email that you've got. It can be tricky if honestly, if it was a faulty suspension. The alternative is just create a secondary account, right? So as a obscure person, that is far easier than if you are a Donald Trump or if you're a Buhari. Or for that matter, a Cyril Ramaphosa, then it's more difficult to just create a secondary account. But as an ordinary citizen, who cares? Just spin up a second account with a different name and carry on. But for a lot of people, it's about the influence that they've amassed on their account. They want their followers reinstated and not just their account. So it's not just about having access to Twitter, but about having access to the thousands or millions of followers that you've amassed in the process. That's if that's what you're after. If all you want is access to Twitter, that's easy. Just create another account. But if you want your followers back, you're going to have to go through a lengthy appeals process.
And if you're Donald Trump, Jan?
Yeah, then no luck. We'll see what Twitter does. Facebook has said that it's banned Donald Trump for 2 years and then it'll reevaluate. Twitter, it's indefinite, and it'll relook at the situation. I think every so often, but for now, Donald Trump is banned, and that's completely at Twitter's discretion. I think it's going to be the same situation here, because the facts of the matter are so widely known. It's impossible that Twitter has made a decision in error. It knows exactly what has happened and then made a decision about what to do. And so, an appeals process is very unlikely to succeed. The thing is, though, in the case of these world leaders, they'll have access to Twitter that we ordinary folks don't. And so it'll be far easier for them to appeal, but I think it'll be far harder for the appeal to succeed. Because in this case, Twitter will go, and without getting into the political situation in Nigeria too much, into the history too much, but they'll go, listen, if you threaten a pogrom against a group of people, you get kicked off. That's the rules.
Yeah, Jan Vermuelen, thank you so much for your time this morning. He is the editor-at-large, My Broadband, just speaking on essentially Facebook and Twitter versus world leaders, but also, I guess, versus the rest of us, we're always having to ensure that what we post is according to certain rules and